Welcome back to Boomer's Playground, and today we're going to be going over the next project in the Odin project, and that one's going to be the Etch-a-Sketch, which, if you're not familiar with what it is, I definitely suggest you guys Google it. My internet is awful right now, so it's going to take a minute, but I think you should. It may add some things when I'm adding to the stuff here. So yeah, so all it was just this thing where this right wheel was like up and down and this one was left or right, or it was the other way around, but it lets you like draw onto the screen. And then to clear this up, you just shook it because it was like, it was magnetic coal or something like that. So kind of neat. But that's going to be this project. In this project, you'll be creating a toy, blah, blah, blah. The project should not be easy for you. Just like most of this stuff, it's not going to be easy. That's the point. That's why this project is so good. And then don't forget to commit early and often. I obviously am not doing this, but I suggest you guys do, because what that commit does is just gives you that like time and space. So if you have something working, you push it up, and then you come back. You know, you're able to do that. And actually, yeah, I guess I'll start doing that. All right, so we'll do an Etch-a-Sketch. This way, like if you have something working, you push it up, and then like you do some more changes and it breaks something, you can easily go back. So let's do we'll do Etch-a-Sketch. We'll jump in there. Then what does it say? So I think I mentioned this in the last video, but the reason it has you do this is you need some sort of file to oh, this is from the last one. Okay. All right, so we got one, two, how many tabs do I have? Okay, so I have a couple different tabs. All right, so let's, sorry about this, guys. Go Etch-a-Sketch there, and then we'll come back and we'll do Etch-a-Sketch here, and then we'll open it up. And I'm not gonna do the README thing. I'm just gonna create the files that we're gonna need. And that will be enough. Sorry. All right, so we'll do HTML. We'll do our Etch-a-Sketch. All right, and all right, so that should be enough for us to. We can do a git diff. Oh, I don't have a git on it yet, so we'll do. So again, I created those files so that I don't have to do this. The reason you do this when you create an empty folder is there needs to be something different than an empty folder for you to commit it. So there needs to be a change. So we can just do git init. And then git readme. Again, I just have an alias for that. And then we can do git cm first commit with index.html, app.js, and style. Style.css. Something that I didn't do when I started at my job, and it didn't hinder me, but it definitely wasn't helpful, is it may seem tedious or trivial, but you want to make these commits as clear as you possibly can, because you're gonna, once you have like a lot of commits, you're gonna go back and you're gonna try and figure out kind of what the case was. So, and if you just have like a commit like, oh, pushing up for fun, you don't know what that commit was, so you don't know if that was the spot to go back to or not. So we'll do git main. Then we'll just copy this guy. And then we'll do, and again, I have GPO is my alias for this, and then I just have to put the branch that I'm pushing up to. Okay, cool, so that's all up. So let's just go read through the instructions real quick, and now you'll see, you know, we have index. Oh wait, why is that? Oh, because there's nothing in these other files, they're empty. Okay, that's fine. Either way, we still have something up there, and the other ones will go up as we move through. So, so set up Git, just like we just did there. Create a web page with a 16 by 16 grid of squares. Create the divs using JavaScript. Don't make them by hand with HTML. Put your grids inside another container div. There's several different ways. I'm going to use Flexbox maybe when we refactor, depending on how long the video goes. Maybe I'll try and learn some CSS grid, but we just use Flexbox at work. Be careful with borders and margins as they can adjust the size of the squares. And then here's some troubleshooting stuff. And then we're going to set up a hover effect that the divs change color when your mouse passes over them, leaving a pixelated trail through your grid like a pen would. All right. And then let's see, there's multiple ways to do this, which we'll show both of them. We're going to add a button to the top of the screen that will send the user a pop-up asking for the number of squares per side. Once entered, the existing grid should be removed and the new one will be generated, and that'll be with a button. And then we have some optional stuff we can do here. Okay, I'm going to refill my drink and we'll get started on this. All right, thanks for waiting for me there, guys. Okay, so we have just our basic HTML here. We have our style coming in. Let's add our JS file. And like it said, it wants us to have a container div. And what you'll see a lot is you will see like wrapping containers with the class name of container. And I think a big reason for this is a lot of the popular CSS frameworks, if you're trying to use like their grid system or some of their utility methods, everything needs to be wrapped in something like this. So you'll see this a lot, and I think it's kind of a good practice to get in the habit of. So, all right, so we have that. And yeah, let's just create the 16 by 16 grid. So let's see, size of grid. So I'm gonna do this. You could just hard code 16, but for two reasons I think we should do this. Is one, we know we're gonna prompt the user, so we're gonna want that in some sort of variable. And two, this just makes it easier. Let's say this was for at work and they're like, hey, do 16 by 16. And let's say this was like this went across 7 files, right? And then they come up in a couple weeks and they say, oh, hey, actually, that was our bad, make it 32. Or actually, that's, make it 24. Now you've got to go find every single spot you put the hard-coded value of 16, and we got to find that and we got to change it to 24. So they call it a magic number, but yeah, I just like this better because we change it in one spot and then we're good to go. So, all right, so we have that. So I'm going to create a function for this, creating the grid, kind of for the same reason. The more you can abstract out, the easier it is to change if you have to. So this will be amount of grids. I could name it the same, but I really like to name them different just to show you guys that like the naming doesn't matter. Because like that seems to be a pretty big disconnect for a lot of people when they're first learning JavaScript. So. Okay, so we need to, well, we're also going to need the container because we're going to need to append these elements to something on the DOM or the HTML file. So let's under container, and then from the last video, if you guys watched it, query selector will take any CSS query or any CSS selector. And so since we have a class of container there, we'll just use that to grab it here. And then we want to do the same amount left to right as we do top to bottom. And so this is probably where a lot of you guys are getting stuck. And this is something that you will continue to get stuck on until you just do this a lot. And it is hard to reason about. So if you got stuck, it's not a big deal. I think most people will. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to do a for loop within another for loop, because we need to go left to right, and then we need to do that the same amount of times top to bottom. So our first for loop is going to be the left. Well, this is going to create the rows left to right. And so here we can do amount of grids, and we'll add 1. And then this is going to be our row. So what I want to do is I'm going to create another element. We probably don't have to do this, but I think for just like semantic and us being able to like style the CSS, I want to. And so this is just going to be the div that is the whole left to right aspect of it. So we can do document.createElement, and then we'll give it a class so we can style it, and this will just be grid row. And then now we're going to go in and we're going to create our inner loop, which is going to be creating each box for that row. So we'll do amount of grids, and we'll do J. And you have to change the I to J, or you can really name them whatever, but they can't be the same for obvious reasons. And then here we'll just we'll create another div. We'll do document.createElement, and we'll do the same. We'll give it a class. This will just be grid box. And then what we want to do is we have this row for each iteration of the outer loop. So what happens is we come in here, I is 0, is I less than 16? It is. So we get in this loop, we create a div, we give it a class name, and now we come into this inner loop and it goes, is J less than, or is J, they set J equal to 0, and then is J less than 16? It is. So we come into this loop, we create another div, we give it a class. Now what we need to do is we need to put this box in this row. And so what I'll do is we'll take the row, we're going to append child. So there's append, and then there's append child. So append is just going to put it next to the element. Append child is going to put it inside of the element. So here we're going to do grid box. And so this will happen. So again, I equals 0, is 0 less than 16? It is. So do this, add the list, come in here, J equals 0, is J less than 6, is 0 less than 16? It is. Create this div, give it a class, and then append it to row. Then we're going to add 1 to J, because we need to finish this entire loop before we come back to this outer loop, which is why this works. So we append 1 box there, J++. So now J, and I'm going to do 4 just so you guys don't get bored. So 0 is 0 less than 4, it is, blah, blah. J is 0 less than 4, it is, blah, blah. So create, give it a class, append to this, add 1 to it, now 1, now J is now 1. Is 1 less than 4? It is, so do this again, add it, add 1, J is now 2. Is 2 less than 4? It is, so do this again, add the class, append it, add ++, it's 3. Is 3 less than 4? It is. Create the box, give it the class, append it to the row, ++, so now J is 4. Is 4 less than 4? It's not. So now we're out of this loop, and we now have this row div that has 4 grid boxes within it. So what we need to do now is we need to add this row to our container element, and so we'll do container.append child again, and we'll do row. So now what's happening is I is 0, 0 is less than 4, we're going to create the row, give it a class, then we jump in this loop, and then like I just showed, we do this 4 times because this inner loop has to completely finish before we jump out of it. So 0 does all this, adds it, adds 1, and this will run through 4 times. And then when this is done, we're going to add this row, which now has the div with 4 divs inside of it, to, sorry guys, to our container div right here. So now we have 1 row in here. So this is done. So now the I is going to be incremented. So now I is 1. Is 1 less than 4? Yes. So again, we're going to create a row, give it a class, and then we're going to do that again. We're going to create 4 more boxes, and we're going to put it in this new row. And then after that's done, we're going to append it. So now we have so by the time this is done, what our JavaScript is actually doing is it's creating this. Because again, we're creating this row and we're adding 4 divs into it, and then we're appending the row to the container. So the end result is going to be this. And so that is going to be tough to reason about. And if this is the first time you're really doing loops within loops, it will be tough and you probably don't understand it, and that's fine. You just have to really stop and think about it step by step. So here we should be good to go. That should give us our, I'm going to change it back to 16. I just wanted to move it to 4 because 16 would have taken far too long for me to go through. And so now we've created this function, but we haven't called it yet. So we still need to call it. So let's do create, oh no, we want create grid, and then we need to pass in the parameter, which will be size of grid. And so this function should be good to go. We don't have any styling, so I don't think we're gonna see anything on the page, but we should still see our, we should still see in the element that it's being created. So let's check out the inspector. And cool, so yeah, like I said, you'll see we don't have any styling on this, but you will see that we did create what looks like 16 rows, or I mean enough rows. And then we also have a bunch of grid boxes. So let's change this back to 4 just for visibility. So you'll see we have 4 rows, and in each row we have 4 grid boxes. Okay, cool. So again, we don't have any styling, so we really shouldn't expect to see anything, but that is a great first start. And so now let's do this. So I'm gonna do container, and I'm gonna have this be display flex. Well, actually, I guess I don't need that because the divs are gonna be block elements, but I do want each grid row to be display flex. And then we can do each grid box, and this is just so we can see it, is we'll just do width can be 50 pixels, we'll do height of 50 pixels, we'll do a border of 1 pixel solid blue, and we can do like a background color of yellow, just to be obnoxious. And then you'll see here we have our 4x4 grid, and then if we change this back to 16, we now see 16, and that's why having this this kind of constant up here is really nice, because you see how quickly we can adjust things and it just works. Okay, cool. So that's the first part, which is awesome. So we have that. Again, I'm just gonna move it to like 5 or something so it's in the screen. Another cool thing that we could probably do is we have it 50 pixels by 50 pixels, but like let's say we gave our container a width of 986, or we'll just say 960 pixels. What we can do is we could dynamically create the width of the grid boxes, and so instead of doing that, we can do it in our JavaScript here. So here we can do const width and height, and we could just do whatever our width is, which is 960. We could do 960 divided by size of grid. And in this way, this will make this a little more dynamic. And what we can do is we can do gridbox.style.width equals, and then we'll do string interpolation. And we'll do pixels, so it'll be width and height. And then we can just do the exact same thing with the height. And that should give us, yeah, so see how it's a little more dynamic. So they're like super big because we're taking the width of the container, which is 960. And so like, let's say we go up to 16, they're gonna get a lot smaller now. So that's not necessary, but kind of a cool little thing to think about when you're building these projects out. Okay, so we have the grid going. So we wanna set up a hover effect, and it's gonna change the color behind, or it's gonna change the background color. So let's do a color wheel hex. I just wanna get like a something like really, CSS off white. Okay, what is this? All right, let's try this and let's see if we can notice it, because I don't want it to be like a really big color, but I don't want it to be clear either. Okay, well, I guess the borders are going to help with that, so that's fine. Okay, cool. So we have all of this now, and the next thing we need to do is we need to add that hover. So how are we going to add the hover? So we need to create an event listener on each box. And so let's do, I think there's mouse enter JS. I think there's a, yeah, cool. So this is just an event listener. So anytime the mouse enters that, it'll do something. And so here we could just change the background color for that. So how do we want to do that? Now we could add the event listener right here before we even append the child, which that'd be kind of nice. Alternately, we could grab all of the divs with this class and loop over that. I'm gonna say we could just do it in here. So we'll do grid box, add event listener, and that's gonna be the mouse enter listener. And because we have access to the grid box that we just created, we can just do, if the mouse enters, we can change the grid box.style.background color, and we'll set that to black. And when you're doing CSS in JavaScript with this .style, in actual CSS, it's background color with the hyphen, but you almost always are just going to turn it into a camel case situation when you're doing it in JavaScript. So, all right, and so you can see that's working as expected. So perfect. The other way, like I said, that we could have done, which I'm not as big of a fan of, is like after this we could have done const all divs, and we could do document.querySelector all, and then we could just each grid box. This just starts, this is getting a little weird because this will need to be so this call will have to be after this call, because otherwise the boxes aren't drawn to the DOM yet. But what this query selector all will give you is a node list of all the elements. And an important part of this is, even if there's only one element, it's still a node list. So let's say there was only one, so we only have one container, right? So if we were to do container, I still would need to do this to get access to it, even though it was only one. So that's something I see some people getting caught up with when they use querySelector. You will always get a node list. And the benefit to that is you can loop over that list. So we could just do all divs.forEach, and then each div, and then we could do div.add event listener, mouse, enter, and then div.style.background color equals black. Well, I think that should still work. And yeah, so that still does. So those are the two different ways. I don't really care for this one because we have to do it after the fact. So I am just gonna do it right here. Plus it kind of reads a little better. We can do like a adding mouse, enter, listener to change background color, so that we can still just do the bit add event listener, mouse, enter, and what was it, grid box dot style dot background color is gonna be black. And so yeah, so here we got this cool little Etch-a-Sketch type thing. So what did they want us to do next? So I guess this is a good point. It's working. We got some sort of functionality. And so we can say this is the difference, and then we'll just do added styling to divs and event listener. So the background color will change when mouse enters the div. Oh, shucks, man. And then we should see, got a couple more things up here. So now we have all the files in there. So the nice thing about this is now we have a time and space that we've saved our code. So if we end up breaking this in this next thing that we're going to add to it, we can easily just go back to that commit and we'll be back to code that we know works. So that's a huge benefit of the whole Git stuff. All right. Okay, so we did all that. So now they want us to add a button to the top of the screen and they want us to adjust the size of it. Okay. Okay. So we're going to add a button. Again, we could definitely just do, you know, you could definitely have done this in the JavaScript and added the button, but I'm just going to hard code it because we kind of want that anyways. Reset page. And we'll do a button, then shake, Etch-a-Sketch. And again, the reason I wanted you guys to kind of look at what the Etch-a-Sketch was is you shook it to like get rid of the old drawing that you had. So let's do that. And then up here, I'm gonna do body is gonna be, width will be 100%. And I kind of want, I don't know if this is gonna work or not. Auto 0. No, I want to try and like kind of center it. So we do width, viewport width. Still nothing. All right, well, we're just not gonna worry about that then. Okay, cool. So now we need that button. So now let's go ahead and let's grab the button. So we can do reset button. And since it's the only button on the page, we can just do the element of button instead of like a class name or something. And I'm gonna make this a let because what we want to do is, actually, no, you know what? Oh crap, so 16. No, this will work. Okay, this will still work. So let's do, so we have that. So now we're gonna do reset button. We're gonna do an event listener, and if you click on that, what we want to do is we want to do a prompt, right? So we'll do user size, and that will be prompt. What dimensions do you want for the new grid? And then what we can do is we can just call we do create grid with whatever the user size is. And actually, I think we'll probably want to do number, because the prompt, if you just look at the documentation, prompt, no matter what they type in there, will give you back a string. Yeah, so instructs the user, submits the text or cancels. Yeah, so a string. So we're checking against, number against a string. We want to make sure that the thing is going to be an actual number there. So the one thing we do have to account for, though, is they say they don't want it to be any bigger than 100. So if that's the case, what I like to do is we'll do user size, and we'll just keep that empty. And we'll go while user size is greater than 100. We want to continue to ask them, because we just want it to be 100 or less. So if they give us 101, we want this to be true so that we come in here and we ask them again. And so here we can just do, yeah, because we still need the original one. And I don't need a prompt or the dot there. So what we're doing is we're going to get the first attempt at it. If they do 101 or more, this is going to be true, which means we're going to come in here and we're going to ask them again, and then we're going to just keep on checking it. Now, one thing I've seen is some people will do this, and you don't want to do this because what you're doing here is you're creating a new user size that's only available in this function scope, which is this while. We don't want that. We want to be using this main one out here. Otherwise, this while loop will not have access to the new number that the person gave us. So I think this should work. So let's do this. So let's do 101. And actually, we should probably change this. So if we're in here, pick a smaller number and make sure it's 100 or less. So we'll do 101. It says pick a number smaller, we'll do 500. Same thing. But if we do 10, you'll see we don't get what we expect. Okay. Oh, you know what? Okay, something's definitely wrong there. Okay, so that makes it look like, So what we need to do is we need to take that container and we need to remove it and then re-add it each time. Otherwise, what's going to happen is, let's do, I think this will be a better example if we keep the number small. So you see how it's 4 by 4? And if I do 5 here, oh, nothing. Ruh-roh, okay, why is this not working? I wonder if my number thing is not working. Okay, so that was 10. Let's make sure it's a number. Okay, so there's a number, so that's... Oh, that's why. So see how I put this create grid inside of this while loop? That means it's only going to run when the number's over 101. So that's not at all what we wanted. Okay. So let's do 5. And you'll see we have 5, but we have 5 underneath the original one. So I'm not going to call that create grid right out of the gate. And what I would like to do is I'm going to grab this. I'm going to remove this, and then we're going to do new container. That'll be a div, and then we can do, oh, well, no, that should still, no, crap, that's not gonna work. Okay, okay, so we need container there, which is fine. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to create a new, we're gonna call it wrapper. And we're going to do this. All right, so let's do const container equals document.querySelector. We'll grab the container. I'm trying to think of what's going to be the best way to remove that. So we'll create this inner wrapper, which will be fine. And then we can even give it a, I guess, yeah, I'm going to want, because I'm going to want a way to grab it and remove it. And then, so from here, we're actually going to do wrapper.appendChild instead, and then we're going to do container.appendChild, and it'll be wrapper. And then in the click listener, what we can do is we can go and we can grab the wrapper. And then I think we should be able to do remove, and then that will remove the wrapper from the screen, which should then be removing the original one. Okay, so wrapper's null. So why is wrapper null? Oh, because the first time, that's why. What an idiot. So there's a couple different ways we could do this. What was happening was I didn't have this running, so this never ran, so wrapper was never created and never added to the DOM. So we could have just done like an easy check. So like we can either keep this here and this should work. And then let's do like 10. And then you'll see we get 10 now. Obviously a little weird, but it works nonetheless. And then we can do like 2, and that works. Alternately, if we didn't want to start with something like that, we could have easily just done this. We could have done if not wrapper. Oh, and actually, that's, I don't even know if this is going to work now that I'm thinking about it. Okay. So essentially what we're saying here is if wrapper is not a thing, create the grid. Otherwise, remove the wrapper and still create the grid. And I'm still not sure if this is going to work or not because wrapper is still not on the DOM. Yeah, okay, so that's still not going to... Oh, wait. Size of grid is not defined. 13. Oh, that's why. Because I was using the size of grid which I had up on line 1, but we removed it, so now we just do amount of grids instead. And you'll see that that worked. I'm going to do 100, which is... oh, that's actually kind of neat. Okay, cool. So, all right, so that was fun. So let's go ahead and let's commit. Let's do a commit here. So what's the diff? So you do gdiff, it just shows like what you've changed. So here we're going to add, and we can do added dynamic size of wrapper, also removed and reinserted wrapper each time so they didn't stack on each other. All right, so another thing we could do is we could change the color of the square from black to white, for example. Have each pass through with the mouse change it to a completely random RGB value. Then try having each pass just add another 10% of black to it. So it only, after 10 passes, is a square completely black. Okay, I'm going to stop right here. That's going to be this video. But then I'm going to do a follow-up where we do tackle these last two options. I just think this might be getting a little long, and I like to keep these as short as possible for you guys. So I hope you guys learned something today. If you have comments or questions, leave them in the comment section below. I'm going to go run an errand, and then I will get the revisit of this one to use these optional ones. But as always, like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next one.